The luxurious penthouse was silent, the kind of calm that precedes a storm. The pregnant wife moved carefully across the polished marble floor, feeling the familiar comfort of their home that had always been her sanctuary. She had been trying to enjoy a quiet evening, unaware of the tension simmering beneath the surface. Her husband, the billionaire, had returned late from a business meeting, his mood dark and volatile, and the storm in his eyes foreshadowed what was about to happen. Without warning, a careless comment from her, a question about his day, or perhaps nothing at all, seemed to trigger a sudden fury in him. In a swift, unthinking motion, he lifted his foot and stomped down on her already swollen ankle. The pain shot through her body instantly, a searing, unbearable agony that caused her to cry out sharply. She stumbled, clutching her foot, her other hand instinctively protecting her belly. The sound of her gasp echoed through the room, a chilling punctuation to the violence that had just erupted. Guests or nearby staff froze, their eyes widening in disbelief at the sheer brutality of the act. The shock rippled outward, a silent alarm that something was horribly wrong. Some reached out instinctively, as though they could reverse the moment that had already caused damage. Her cries, half of pain and half of disbelief, filled the penthouse, cutting through the usual hum of luxury and opulence. The billionaire's expression, twisted with anger, barely registered the pain he had inflicted. To him, this moment was a release, a way to assert control, while the world around him seemed to blur. Yet the impact of his action was immediate. The wife's ankle throbbed violently, her face pale and etched with both physical pain and the emotional terror of being betrayed by the one she trusted most. Chaos filled the room as bystanders tried to react, some attempting to console her, others frozen in shock at the sheer audacity of the act. In those moments, the penthouse transformed from a place of comfort to a scene of tension and fear, the echoes of the foot stomp marking the beginning of a story of betrayal, danger, and secrets that would soon unravel in ways no one could have imagined. The pain radiated through her ankle in sharp, unrelenting waves, each heartbeat amplifying the throbbing agony. She sank to the floor, clutching her swollen foot, tears welling in her eyes, not just from the physical injury, but from the deeper, more unbearable sting of betrayal. This was the man she had trusted, the one who had promised to protect her and their unborn child, and yet he had chosen cruelty over care. Her body ached, yes, but it was her heart that felt truly broken. Every movement sent jolts of pain through her already fragile body, a constant reminder of how vulnerable she had become. The pregnancy had made her cautious, aware of every step, every precaution, yet in one brutal moment, all her careful attention had been rendered meaningless. She instinctively placed a hand over her growing belly, feeling the small, gentle movements of the life within her. Her child, innocent and unaware of the violence erupting around them, became her sole anchor in a world that suddenly felt unsafe. Her mind swirled with conflicting emotions, fear, shock, sadness, and a crushing sense of helplessness. The man she had given her trust to, her husband, had crossed a line she never imagined he would. Questions raced through her head. Why? How could he do this to me, to us? Every memory of their life together, every moment she had believed in his love, now seemed tainted by doubt and pain. Even as bystanders rushed to help, offering support and concern, she felt isolated. No one could truly understand the betrayal she experienced, the helplessness of relying on someone who had turned into a source of harm. Her love for her unborn child fueled her resilience, but it also magnified the fear. She had to protect not only herself but the tiny life growing inside her, all while processing the emotional wounds that cut far deeper than any physical injury. In the quiet moments between the cries of pain and gasps for breath, she realized that her world had shifted irrevocably. The sanctuary of her home had been shattered, replaced by a sense of danger and mistrust. Her vulnerability was palpable, but so too was the fierce determination that love for her child would give her, the strength to endure, to survive, and to face the storm that had been unleashed. Beneath the polished image of wealth, charm, and sophistication, the millionaire led a life far more complex, and far more deceitful, than anyone around him could imagine. To the public, he was the picture of success, a devoted husband, a father-to-be, and a man whose empire seemed untouchable. But behind closed doors, a secret world thrived, one fueled by obsession, manipulation, and a dangerous sense of entitlement. The mistress, with her calculating charm, was at the center of this hidden reality, and he had crafted an intricate web of finances to satisfy her whims without leaving a trace. Years of cunning planning had gone into establishing hidden bank accounts under layers of aliases, offshore accounts, and carefully coded transactions. Each deposit, each withdrawal, was meticulously documented in private ledgers and digital records only he could access. The sums involved were enormous, yet invisible to the wife, who had trusted him implicitly with their shared life and resources. He believed himself clever, untouchable, and untarnished, convinced that no one would ever uncover the truth. His duplicity extended beyond finances. He maintained an intricate balance, projecting love and concern toward his pregnant wife while simultaneously catering to the mistress's demands. Meetings, secret transfers, and whispered phone calls became his daily ritual, all executed with the cold efficiency of a man used to controlling every aspect of his world. In his mind, he was untouchable, a master of deception, and the mistress's desires justified the betrayal. Yet, as calculated as he believed his life to be, his duplicity had blind spots. The very act of stomping on his wife's foot, a moment of unrestrained rage, would inadvertently expose the fragile threads of his secret. The hidden accounts, the clandestine payments, and the mistress's influence were now teetering on the edge of revelation, threatening to unravel the carefully maintained illusion. Behind the veneer of power and sophistication, the millionaire's empire was fragile. His secret life, built on greed and betrayal, was poised to collide with the consequences of his actions, proving that no amount of wealth or control could fully shield him from the repercussions of his own duplicity. The mistress thrived in the shadows, a master of subtle manipulation and emotional cunning. To the outside world, she was merely a glamorous companion to a wealthy man, charming, poised, and unassuming. But behind closed doors, she wielded influence with precision, carefully orchestrating the millionaire's actions to serve her own desires. Her motives were clear: power, wealth, and the intoxicating thrill of control. She didn't just want him, she wanted him to bend every aspect of his life to her whims, even if it meant breaking the trust and spirit of his pregnant wife. She studied him relentlessly, learning the weaknesses he rarely acknowledged: his need for admiration, his desire to feel in control, and the fragile ego that masked deep insecurities. She knew exactly how to speak, when to withdraw affection, and which subtle criticisms would make him act rashly. Each whispered word, each strategically placed compliment, nudged him further down the path of cruelty. The foot stomp, the hidden bank accounts, the calculated distance from his wife, all were influenced by her unseen hand. Her manipulation was both psychological and emotional. She painted the wife as fragile, overdramatic, or ungrateful, convincing the husband that his resentment and occasional rage were justified. In doing so, she distorted his perception of reality, turning his own doubts and fears into weapons against the woman he had once vowed to protect. Every act of cruelty toward the pregnant wife, every dismissive glance or callous remark, was fueled by the mistress's subtle orchestration, a demonstration of her power over him and over the household. Yet her influence went beyond mere control. It was addictive. The husband, intoxicated by the mistress's attention and validation, became complicit in a pattern of abuse he might never have engaged in on his own. She fed his ego while manipulating his conscience, making him believe that betraying and hurting his wife was a small price to pay for pleasure, freedom, and affirmation. In every glance, every whisper, every secretive plan, the mistress's presence loomed over the family. She was not just an interloper but the architect of tension and cruelty, driving the husband's actions while remaining untouched by guilt. Her motives were clear, and her manipulation was ruthless, setting the stage for the inevitable revelation that would shake the household to its core. The pain in her foot had barely subsided when another, far more devastating discovery began to surface. In the days following the incident, as she tried to navigate the throbbing ache and swelling of her injured ankle, she noticed oddities that had gone unnoticed before. Bills were missing, statements seemed altered, and small inconsistencies in household spending began to emerge. At first, she questioned herself. Perhaps fatigue or distraction had caused her to overlook routine transactions. But as she dug deeper, a chilling truth started to take shape. She began reviewing the household accounts, meticulously going through the bank statements that had always been managed by her husband. It was in this careful scrutiny, spurred by the helplessness of her injury and the isolation imposed by his growing distance, that she stumbled across a suspicious series of transfers. Money had been siphoned away, large sums disappearing from accounts she thought were jointly managed, flowing instead into secretive, obscure accounts she had never seen before. Curiosity and fear collided. She cross-referenced every transaction, every date, every entry, and a pattern emerged. The funds weren't being used for household needs, charity, or business investments. They were flowing into accounts linked to a name she didn't recognize, a name that, after a brief investigation, revealed a connection to the mistress. Her chest tightened as the realization hit. Her husband had been diverting money, betraying both her and the life they were supposed to be building together. The foot injury, a moment of rage and cruelty, had inadvertently provided the impetus to uncover the truth. It forced her attention toward details she might otherwise have ignored, the physical pain acting as a catalyst for awareness of the emotional and financial betrayal surrounding her. Shock, fear, and heartbreak mingled as she pieced together the full extent of the duplicity. What began as a minor physical injury had spiraled into the revelation of a secret life she had never imagined, leaving her reeling not only from the physical assault but from the staggering betrayal that threatened the stability of her marriage and her trust. The realization hit her like a thunderclap, leaving her reeling in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Her husband, the man she had trusted, loved, and believed would protect her, had not only betrayed her physically with his cruel stomp but also emotionally and financially through a lifetime of deceit. The discovery of the hidden bank accounts, the secret transfers to the mistress, and the cold calculations behind each move combined into an unbearable weight on her chest. Anger surged through her veins, mingling with the heartbreak that threatened to suffocate her. She sank onto the couch, her injured foot throbbing with every heartbeat, a constant reminder of his violence. Tears flowed freely, unrestrained, not just from the pain but from the overwhelming sense of helplessness. Her body had been violated, her trust shattered, and her sanctuary turned into a cage of fear and betrayal. Each sob echoed the betrayal she felt, a raw and painful rhythm that mirrored the turmoil inside her. Anger flared with every thought of the mistress, that woman who had wormed her way into her life and manipulated the man she loved. How had he allowed this to happen? How could he have prioritized another woman over his pregnant wife, over their unborn child, over the bond they were supposed to share? The questions raced through her mind, unanswerable and cruel, leaving her grasping at fragments of understanding in a sea of confusion. Yet beneath the anger and heartbreak was a small, stubborn flame of resilience. Her love for her unborn child anchored her, reminding her that she had a life to protect, a future to fight for. The emotional trauma intertwined with the physical pain, making each moment unbearable, yet it also forced her to confront the reality of her situation with clarity. She could no longer ignore the truth, and the first step toward reclaiming her power was acknowledging the full extent of the betrayal. In those long, painful hours, she wept, she raged, and she reflected. The emotional breakdown was not just a collapse but a necessary unraveling of illusions, a raw, honest confrontation with the cruel reality she had been blind to for so long. It was in this storm of emotion that the first seeds of resolve began to grow. She stood in the dimly lit living room, the throbbing pain in her foot barely registering against the surge of emotion coursing through her. The stack of bank statements and digital records she had unearthed lay on the coffee table between them, a silent accusation she could no longer contain. Her voice, trembling yet sharp, broke the suffocating silence. "Why?" she asked, each word heavy with hurt. "Why would you do this to me? To us? To our child?" Her husband shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. His polished composure wavered as the gravity of her discovery settled over him. I didn't mean for it to get this far," he muttered, voice defensive yet strained. "It's not what you think." Not what I think," she interrupted, her tone rising. "You've been transferring money to her accounts for months. You've been lying to me while you hurt me physically. How could you think I wouldn't notice?" Her chest heaved as the words tumbled out, raw and accusatory. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture meant to appear contrite but failing to mask his panic. "I was trying to protect us. Protect you in my own way. She has leverage, connections. I thought I could manage it without it affecting you. I didn't want to burden you with. You call hiding money and cheating on me protecting me, she snapped, disbelief lacing every syllable. Her tears glistened in the low light, and her voice cracked with both anger and sorrow. You stomped on my foot. You risked our child. And now I find out about secret accounts. You betrayed me completely. He opened his mouth again, but she held up a hand, cutting him off. No more excuses. I need the truth. All of it. Who is she? How long has this been going on? The tension between them was palpable, the room heavy with betrayal and despair. He hesitated, knowing that words could no longer erase the damage, that justification could not undo the pain. Slowly, reluctantly, he began to speak, revealing the web of deceit, the financial manipulations, and the mistress who had ensnared him, each confession landing like a hammer against the fragile remains of trust. As he spoke, her mind raced, balancing fury and heartbreak, the confrontation serving as both a reckoning and a painful catalyst for the decisions she would soon have to make. The mistress reclined in her plush designer chair, a smug smile playing across her lips as she sipped champagne, the bubbles tickling her senses like a private celebration of victory. She had orchestrated it all with calculated precision. The stolen glances, the whispered manipulations, the subtle poison that had driven the billionaire husband into her hands. Every detail had unfolded exactly as she had envisioned. His betrayal of his pregnant wife was her triumph, a confirmation of her power and cunning. Oblivious to the storm brewing beyond her carefully curated world, she imagined herself untouchable. The husband, once a figure of dominance and control, now danced to her tune, wrapped around her finger by his own weaknesses. She reveled in his distraction. The fact that he had allowed his obsession with her to erode the trust and loyalty he had once sworn to uphold. To her, the wife's cries of pain, the throbbing injury, and the emotional devastation were distant echoes, irrelevant to the intoxicating sensation of victory that surged through her. Her arrogance blinded her to the signs that were emerging around her. Friends, colleagues, and even the staff had begun noticing cracks in the facade, small anomalies that hinted at secrets too dangerous to ignore. Yet she dismissed them with a flick of her hand, convinced that her meticulous planning had shielded her from consequence. She laughed softly at the thought of the wife, imagining her powerless and defeated, unable to retaliate or expose the truth. Every action she had taken, every whisper of influence, felt justified in her mind. She was the puppet master, the clever architect of chaos in a world of wealth and privilege. But the higher she climbed on the pedestal of arrogance, the closer she moved to a fall she could neither anticipate nor prevent. In her blind confidence, she underestimated the resilience of the one she sought to destroy, and the consequences that were quietly gathering strength to unseat her carefully constructed dominion. Amid the chaos and heartbreak, the wife was not entirely alone. Friends and family, long concerned about the subtle changes in her husband's behavior, began to notice her withdrawal, the growing fear in her eyes, and the bruises, both physical and emotional, that she tried desperately to hide. One close friend, a sharp and intuitive confidant, insisted on staying by her side, offering comfort while carefully observing the patterns of deceit that had been invisible to the wife for so long. A protective figure emerged unexpectedly, a trusted family member with experience in finance and law, someone who could navigate the complex web of hidden accounts and secret transactions. Together, they began to review records, piecing together the puzzle of the husband's financial duplicity. Each discovery added to the growing evidence: hidden transfers, unexplained expenditures, and transactions pointing unmistakably to the mistress. The picture of betrayal became clearer with every document they examined. Alongside financial scrutiny, allies began documenting the physical abuse and the pattern of cruelty. Witness statements, photographs, and even video clips of the husband's outbursts were collected carefully, forming a comprehensive record of the threats and harm the wife had endured. They knew that confronting him without proof would be futile. Only with undeniable evidence could they empower her to reclaim control and expose the truth. The collaboration of friends, family, and protective figures provided more than just practical assistance. It offered emotional support, a sense of solidarity, and reassurance that she was not powerless. In their presence, the wife found her voice slowly returning, a courage she had thought lost. The Allies' meticulous work and unwavering support began to turn the tide, laying the foundation for a confrontation that would not only expose the husband's betrayal but also reclaim the dignity and safety that had been stolen from her. The wife and her allies moved carefully, aware that one misstep could alert the husband or the mistress, allowing them to cover their tracks. Every late-night search through financial records, every quiet conversation with bank officials, and every painstaking comparison of statements was executed with the precision of a covert operation. The hidden accounts, once carefully masked, began to unravel under their scrutiny. Tiny discrepancies, a misdated transfer, a repeated transaction pattern, revealed a trail that pointed unmistakably to the mistress. Suspense hung in the air as they collected each piece of evidence. Late one evening, the wife discovered a folder on the family computer, cleverly mislabeled, containing detailed spreadsheets of payments and personal notes between her husband and the mistress. Her hands trembled as she opened it, heart pounding, knowing that this discovery could finally confirm every suspicion that had tormented her. The entries documented lavish gifts, hotel stays, and even travel plans, all funded secretly through accounts she had never been told about. Each line she read deepened both the hurt and the clarity. The betrayal was real, calculated, and ongoing. Meanwhile, the Allies coordinated with professionals to secure copies of bank statements and digital correspondence, ensuring that the evidence would be undeniable in any confrontation or legal proceeding. Their careful planning created a chain of proof, leaving no room for excuses, lies, or manipulation. Every photograph, transaction record, and message was cross-checked, forming a tapestry of deceit that would leave the husband and mistress exposed beyond any hope of denial. The suspense intensified as they worked to assemble the evidence into a coherent, compelling narrative. Every step felt risky, the possibility of discovery looming over them like a dark cloud. Yet the tension only strengthened their resolve. Each piece of proof brought them closer to justice and gave the wife a growing sense of empowerment. By the time the evidence was complete, they had created more than just documentation. They had built the key to exposing the husband's treachery and the mistress's influence, preparing for a confrontation that would leave no room for doubt or deception. The courtroom was tense, the kind of heavy silence that only follows the revelation of a long-held secret. The wife, flanked by her allies, stepped forward with the compiled evidence, each document, photograph, and bank statement a testament to the betrayal she had endured. The air seemed to crackle with anticipation as the defense lawyer tried to interject, but the proof was undeniable. The hidden bank accounts, the secret transfers, and the mistress's manipulations were laid bare for all to see. Gasps echoed through the room as the audience, friends, family, and even the media, absorbed the full extent of the husband's duplicity. The millionaire, once a figure of power and dominance, shrank under the weight of exposure. His face flushed with humiliation as he realized that every lie, every secret indulgence, and every cruel act toward his pregnant wife was now public knowledge. The mistress, who had believed herself untouchable, sat rigid, her smug composure cracking as the documents revealed her orchestration of the betrayal. Witness after witness, corroborating the abuse and the financial deception, testified to the meticulous planning that had been used to manipulate the wife and conceal the truth. Each revelation landed like a blow, dismantling the carefully constructed image of the husband and the mistress. The media captured every stunned reaction, every whispered word of disbelief, magnifying the humiliation and the weight of accountability. In that moment, justice felt both immediate and inevitable. The court, or the public forum, depending on the exposure, became a stage where truth triumphed over deception. The husband, stripped of his pretense, faced the consequences of his actions, the betrayal, the cruelty, and the financial misconduct. The mistress, whose arrogance had blinded her to the potential fallout, confronted the reality of her role in the scandal. The wife, standing tall despite her injury and heartbreak, finally felt a measure of vindication. The exposure of the truth was not only a public reckoning but a personal victory, a reclaiming of dignity, safety, and justice. The humiliation of the guilty parties served as a stark reminder that deceit, no matter how cleverly hidden, could never remain buried forever. With the truth fully exposed and justice set in motion, a heavy weight lifted from the wife's shoulders. The husband, once untouchable in his arrogance, now faced the consequences of his actions. Legal authorities froze the hidden bank accounts, and the court proceedings ensured that his betrayal and abuse would no longer go unpunished. The mistress, too, was held accountable, her manipulations laid bare, her influence over the household dismantled, and her false sense of invincibility shattered. Public opinion and legal scrutiny combined to strip away the power she had so carelessly wielded. For the wife, the victory was bittersweet. The pain of betrayal and the memory of physical abuse lingered, but alongside it came a profound sense of liberation. She had endured, fought, and emerged stronger than she had ever imagined. Her focus shifted entirely to her unborn child, the innocent life that had been at the center of so much cruelty. Protecting this child, providing a safe and loving environment, and reclaiming her autonomy became her driving purpose. Every step she took, however careful given her injury, was imbued with resolve and hope. Support from friends and family, who had stood by her side throughout the ordeal, reinforced her newfound strength. The allies who had helped uncover the truth remained close, their unwavering loyalty a reminder that she was never truly alone. With their support, she began rebuilding her life, creating a space where trust could be restored and love could flourish without fear or manipulation. The ordeal also transformed her perspective. She understood the value of vigilance, self-worth, and emotional resilience. The scars, both visible and invisible, were reminders of her survival, lessons etched into her being that no wealth or deception could erase. As the husband and mistress faced the consequences of their actions, she embraced a future filled with promise. Her child would grow up surrounded by love, safety, and the strength of a mother who had confronted betrayal and emerged victorious. The chapter of pain closed, replaced by one of hope, empowerment, and the quiet, unwavering determination to build a life defined not by deceit, but by truth, integrity, and love.